Welcome to the Stars Align Dramas and Dreams podcast, where the infinite sky meets the starry world of dramas. We're your guides through the cosmos, from heart-stopping queer love stories to straight dramas of unexpected love.
In every unforgettable moment in between that make us swoon, laugh, and cry. And, of course, we'll sprinkle in a little stardust along the way.
I'm Nyxi.
I'm Cyrus.
Each week, we'll explore the stellar journey of love, identity, and connection, one drama and one dream at a time.
So, gather your stardust, find your spot under the stars, and let's dive in.
This week, we're casting our gaze upon royalty in dramas, letting the stars guide us through the exciting and vast world it holds.
To start our exploration, we need to understand one thing. What is royalty and why does it matter in media? I had to change the question this week for the first time this entire season because, I didn't want to go into monarchy as like a form of government.
Yeah,
because
for sure.
simply not doing it. So, within the confines of media.
So the idea of media having royalty in it. Depending on the genre, if you're looking at the genres we mostly look at, it's a rom-com aspect and less so of a the traditional government aspect of like the fight
societal,
for the throne.
political.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's more so of oftentimes maybe it's a kind of like, rich poor situation.
Yeah.
Especially if we're dealing with romances.
Power dynamic situation is typically the play in a lot of rom-coms, and like occasionally you will get the societal or political like aspects of it woven into the plot, but it's not typically a main thing within a romantic storyline, which is what we mostly watch.
Which depends on, like I said, depends on the genre. Because there can be rom-com ones where it is still heavily focused on that. With like the rom-com part being, or the romantic side being more like a subplot kind of situation.
A subplot, yeah.
Mm-hmm. But we ourselves don't watch too many that focus heavily on that kind of dynamic.
Which, in our opinion, is fair.
Just personal opinions.
Since we now understand the basics, let's break down the constellation of dramas surrounding royalty, mapping out the stars that connect to reveal the deeper layers of meaning we're exploring.
To navigate this constellation, we'll be focusing on how our favorite examples, commonalities, and audience perception impact royal dramas.
We start our exploration with our favorite examples, where we'll examine the heart of royals and dramas and explore how it's essential to understanding them.
I feel like the biggest category in which this can be pulled from is more so going to be the historic or the costume period dramas.
Yeah.
And for me, that's going to actually pull a lot more from my Chinese dramas.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times we happen to have a royalty aspect. May that be a traditional, like, actual, like, especially if we're dealing with, like, historic pieces or costume period ones rather than fantasy, which I do watch more fantasy, though. Those are going to be more traditional, like the monarch and kind of like the actual royalty you often think of. But we also have like the play on series, like more of like the Shanxia, right? And where we're dealing with like, while we're faced with aspects of like demons or immortals and yada yada, a lot of times there's still a hierarchy in those setups.
Yeah.
Like maybe there's still like a lord in the the demon lord, or maybe there's like
or the demon king or whatever.
So many different aspects, and that still plays into the royalty of it. Because like for example, like Moonlight Mystique, that had one.
Yep.
Or which is one of our series satellites. We have Till the End of the Moon. Except for that one, maybe not. That one is an interesting one because like we get costume and time period ones, especially in like the human realm setups. But then depending on the era of which we're pulling from, depends on like where the character is in that royalty. Like for example, Tintajin he was considered a outcasted royalty. But that still plays into the royalty concept. And he was supposedly the demon lord because he had the bone in him at some point. So like, again,
the best of both worlds apparently.
Sure. Tells me someone needs to watch the series. Just fixing to say that.
Obviously, is either the best of both worlds or the worst of both worlds, and I feel like it's more the worst of both worlds.
Definitely
for this poor boy. I'll get around to watching it eventually, I promise.
Please do. Yes, ma'am. do. Or like, getting away from that, we have series, or diving into the currently airing series because I've got to bring it up. The Next Prince.
She's talked nonstop about this to me personally.
Hey,
and to everyone she works with.
I have been pitching this series to like anyone who's willing to listen me pitch the series, and like it really shows that some of these people that I am pitching it to have clearly not had to wait 3 whole 8 years. I wanted to say a cuss word there. 3 whole years for this thing to come out. And plus, So
Yeah.
some of it might be for the hype. The other part of it is for like, I actually am obsessed with it. Maybe a little too much. But that's okay. Like tomorrow, I'm going to bring it up right now. In terms of when we were recording this right now, is episode 5, and I can bet you right now I will be up the moment it drops on the platform because have not missed a single day, a single week that it has dropped at the exact time.
And the minutes leading up to it will be texting me, it's almost time. 2 more minutes.
I've already talked to my coworker about the fact that about how they better watch it soon because they go on vacation soon, and I was like, we gotta talk about this before you leave, so you better watch it. Which they are caught up, at least. I can give them that benefit of the doubt. They just got the new one that comes out tomorrow, and I want to talk about it. I'm so ready for it. And so all I want to say is that one's more traditional in the sense of like we get like the idea of royalty that we're used to in the aspects. Yeah. Of course, it has its own plot wise, of course, involved. But or like the other series satellites we have this week for us, and that is the Loyal Pin and I'm Your Moon, both in which involve a level of royalty. Each unique to their own, of course.
Yeah.
I think I'm Your Moon starts off royalty and probably leads a little bit more into just rich families that stem from royalty, which I think I really do think that's where a lot of those royalty titles come from in Thailand, because I think they've just had a lot of families that had redeemed themselves as royalty, but in actuality, not necessarily the normal concept of royalty in the sense of when we think of royalty, especially as Westerners, we tend to think of someone who rules over a good majority of land, like a big stretch of land. And most of the time, not really just a city. We're talking about more so like a governing, like you said, government kind of thing. I don't feel like that's the same for some of the titles, or at least it doesn't feel like that's the same we're dealing with in some of those dramas, especially like I'm Your Moon, and the Loyal Pin doesn't seem like he was governing anything. It really felt more like a rich kind of family, maybe a business kind of situation. And that's what I'm saying is, that's why I feel like sometimes it depends on what culture we're pulling from with how in line that lines up with Western royalty. So like that's a factor too. But like going back into favorites, or not necessarily favorites, but like we're just kind of just spitballing things, because there's several royalty ones. Like this one's just fun to bring up because like I feel like there's a lot of people that kind of forget about it. It's not a focus at all on the royalty concept, but because like I guess pulling up royalty ones depends on like, are we looking into things that are like heavily focused in the setting of royalty, or in the allure of like maybe a character stems from royalty? And if we're looking in the one from stems from royalty, I want to point out the fact that in Sky in Your Heart, that Prince was also technically a prince from a royalty like stem family in the northern, I think it was northern Thailand.
You were not going to believe me. I was also going to bring that up.
I don't believe you. I can't believe you would bring up the same series. That's funny. That's hilarious. I just think it's very
also in my brain.
I just wanted to bring that up because like while that doesn't stem heavily at all in terms of the show itself in plot or anything to do with royalty, it is brought up that his family comes from a stem, or what do you want to say, a branch from royalty. And I just wanted to bring that up because I was like, that's kind of a funny little thing that I don't know if many people remember, if they've even seen the series, to remember that he was that. And It's like ironic and iconic that his name was Prince. And he actually was. So I can't believe you also thought to bring the same thing up.
One that I want to bring up
Mm-hmm.
falls outside of like what we normally talk about in this podcast for two reasons. A, it's a movie. B, it's Western. But Red, White, and Royal Blue.
I knew it. I knew it. I was waiting for it.
Oh,
I was waiting for it.
That book, going into even more outside what we usually talk about, I love that book.
That's fair.
It's very much a comfort read for me. I reread it quite often when I'm feeling down, but very good. And like, I actually like am going to tie it back into what we typically talk about, because tell me why one of my like fixation ships currently, William S, for S's birthday, did a photo shoot that was Red, White, and Royal Blue themed.
I remember that.
Oh, it was so good. Love that. I'm trying not to get my hopes up because like licensing would be an issue.
Yeah.
But I don't remember which producer was talking about it, but there was an interview with one of like a Thai producer who was saying that they would love to do a Thai adaptation of Red, White, and Royal Blue.
I would be more so intrigued to how they would even adapt that, because
I know
Red, White, and Blue deals with completely two different countries. So it makes you question what two countries or what concept would they be taking from in Red, White, and Royal Blue. Because the other concept that Red, White, and Royal Blue deals with isn't just royalty, but also a completely different government issue. So like you have two different government, contrastingly different kind of outcomes, because you have like a, you know, in the United States, right, aspect, and like Britain. So like that's an interesting take, and that's not the first time. I've always wanted to see something get adapted that way, because like Red, White, and Blue has that trouble, and it never got adapted. But people talked about doing W and Crash Land on You as in a US series, like both of them, but neither one of them got made. But I was still curious, because I was like, how would you adapt something like that? That is deeply rooted in something both either between two countries, more so that's the reason, or a government-based situation that isn't. I mean, I guess sometimes government ones can be messed with because you can completely flip the narrative thing. Like I've seen that happen before. But I don't know. I would be so intrigued to see how they took on Red, White, and Royal Blue as a Thai remake. And I'd prefer if they made it a series, because I just love series over movies.
Same.
And so I don't know. I'd love to see that. I think they would do great.
I was just say, well, like William S could totally see it. Like the photo shoot absolutely has sold it in my head.
But that still faces us with the problem with like not only we're dealing with two different countries, it's two different ethnic and race as well. Sorry, I'm starting to think too hard about it, and I'm here for it. Like I'm so here for it, because I just want to see how you would even play that off. Because like, you know, we were dealing with American, what was it, Mexican, what was it? What was his race?
He was American,
nationality.
Mexican.
Yeah,
Mexican
and
American.
then you have like traditional like Caucasian, British, right? And so like European, and both S and William that I'm aware of are both just Thai, and unless one of them has some Chinese ethnic in them, which is very possible in Thailand, like extremely possible.
Yeah.
Because my friend who's also from Thailand has brought up the fact that, you know, like her, for example, like her grandmother has more Chinese in her, and while her other side of her family has more Thai in them, and she's like, it's just something you can just see in Thailand, and like it's a very concept structure thing, and maybe that's the polar things that they pull from. But even so, I don't know. I'm curious how they would do that, you know. Especially if you did William S. So I don't know.
Another couple, a GMMTV couple that has like a lot of people after that interview came out. A lot of people were like, like fan casting. You know, I don't know if this particular comment came out after or before all of like the discussion happened, but Joss Galwin has like also came out and said that he would love to be in a remake of it.
That.
And I'm like, I could also see that.
I could see him for sure playing one of them. I think I could see him playing more so. I could see Joss playing Henry, to be
I
honest.
can too.
Like,
and like honestly, Gawain I think could play a pretty good Alex.
Honestly, yeah. Oh my god.
And that's not just me being Gawain biased.
Are we sure? Are we sure?
We're never sure.
We're never sure for sure. If you were to outside cast couples, like couples that aren't actual couples, who do you think would play better? Like, break couples if you need to make pairings.
We're gonna be here a while.
Joss does play really well, especially as the Henry. I think if they pulled him from a concept where if he needs to use his English, damn, he would do great.
Luke could also do it because Luke has pretty good English. I say pretty good English. Which is talking about like the English thing is wild because like Gawain did live in Philadelphia for several years.
True.
So like he could even pull English, you know?
True.
But Luke as well.
I was just mentioning that because like depending on where they want to pull him from in terms of like we're dealing with two different countries. English doesn't have to be where we have to pull from. It could be something completely different. It could maybe they pull from maybe like I said, that Chinese and Thai representation that we get naturally in the culture itself on its own. Maybe they pull from that. If that's the case, then you'd want to pull for someone who actually knows Chinese. Not necessarily, but it would be, what do you want to say, like it would feel more like authentic in a way, you know?
Yeah.
In casting.
My mind immediately go to Puwen.
Yeah, mine did too. My mind also went to people who were actually also Chinese. Like, even though he's not a GMM TV, I did think of Li Hongshi because he's Singaporean.
Mm-hmm.
And so we'd pull from there.
That could be good.
I don't know. I'm thinking a little too hard because, like, to be on the writing of an adaptation, I think I'd love to do that. Not an adaptation, a remake, sorry. Because that's not exactly the same. Because that would be so cool to, like, really think, how do we take this work without jeopardizing the, material of it and somehow flip it to work in our favor of culture and stuff like that? Like I said, that's one of my favorite things is seeing stuff get adapted or, remade into other cultures because they have to adapt it better to their culture. Otherwise, it's not going to make sense in their culture. Like, for example, this one isn't a remake of anything, but there's a concept in it that does not exist in Thai culture. And I know this because my friend showing her the trailer was like, what the heck? And she actually asked us, what is that? And that's Leap Day. That's not a concept in Thailand. It literally doesn't make sense even in Thai, but having them go through the whole process of trying to explain it in the very beginning of what Leap Day is and why it like happens the way it does. Because like it does that in the series and you notice it really tries to explain it.
That's interesting. I didn't realize that.
In Thai, that's not a common thing at all. Like no one says that and it's not a known knowledge. You also have to think that they use a different calendar too.
Yeah.
So their years are completely different.
Huh.
So it was a concept that she was like, what is that? She literally asked me and her friend, like, and her other friend, like, what is that? And we had to sit her not necessarily for long, but we had to like brief her up on like what that means. It's like, because every year makes up a quarter of a day, we therefore, after 4 years, gain a day in February. And so she was like, oh, that's wild. And so believe it or not, that whole series is based on a concept that doesn't even exist in their culture, which is very creative actually for them. And so seeing someone adapt something from a material that is vastly different culture-wise would be put me in, coach. I want to be there. I want to be there for it so much. That's so cool to me. And I'm so intrigued by that. It's like I would love to sit there and be like, let's debate pros and cons of doing a concept of making one Chinese and one Thai like represented, but the problem is we didn't get into like how would we set up the government for it, how would we set up like, because like you don't need the government but you need that, because that is technically also what it was based around. So because you're like, okay, so do we keep Thailand royalty and then we keep we get a little communist there, so I don't know how how you want to play that out. That's the issue, because like it's harder to play into that, especially with China, because China's humongous versus British versus America somehow played out a little bit better. It's not as, it could be rough, but like they handled it pretty well, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I don't even know how you would set that up, but it would be, I would love to think about it. I would love to be there and be like, let's process this. Like, let's really think about it. And it doesn't even have to be China. We can look into other regions near Thailand, and maybe it doesn't have to be near Thailand at all. It could be it could be a European country itself. I don't know. I'm thinking a little too hard into this. Like, I'm invested. Like, I'm invested. Put me in. I mean, they could also keep the American part and make a Thai part, because they have to have a Thai regardless. You would think, because that is the culture we are now set in. But then you have to worry about the other culture you're pulling from, you know. So I'm saying they could do American and Thai, they could do British and Thai, they could do literally any other country. But like it's something you'd have to completely sit and think on and be like, okay, how would we do this? Mm-hmm. How would we do this, and also do it to where it doesn't necessarily, like, I can't necessarily say this because we get controversial things all the time in series and in shows, but like you would still want to somehow lure an idea that isn't, you know, ideally, and it can be fiction. You can say it's just fiction, which it is fictionist regardless, but I don't know. It was just like you really want to weigh that pros and cons of different things and different aspects. Like it could be royalty to royalty, it could be monarchy to monarchy, but like I feel like that it just doesn't feel the same. That feels like a traditional royalty concept, and that's not what Red, White, and Blue I feel like was, because it was two different governments. Situations. It wasn't the same government to another same government. It was like, you know, marrying off, kind of like, you know, a daughter. You're sending off a daughter to another kingdom kind of thing, or, you know, whatever, or two princes fall in love kind of thing. It's not the same concept because we're dealing with two different governments. So that's what I'm saying. You really have to think about it. Am I getting a little too into this? Maybe, but feel free to add thoughts on this. Anyone else?
Yeah.
Please.
Absolutely.
I would interact to most of those because I just be obsessed with like hearing people out on like, okay, how about this country and Thai, you know? Or like, how about this concept? And I'm like, great, let's compile all of that and send it to GM and TV. Or any production company at this point. Like, let's go. I wouldn't actually do that. But like, I don't know. Now you got me thinking, man.
Like, this is all I've thought about. Like, my brain keeps coming back to it because like, oh, it's so good.
God, I'd be obsessed with thinking like just, oh my God, I would love to do a whole podcast episode over just brainstorming adaptation ideas.
Oh yeah,
especially we could do other cultures. Oh, one day, maybe.
100%.
I would be so down. Anyone want to pitch ideas? Maybe we'll do it in another season because that would be so fun. Be like, hey, how about this series in this country? And I'd be like, bet, let's do a podcast over talking about concepts and just ideas of multiple series adapted into this country, you know, kind of aspect. I don't know. I'm so down for that.
It'd be fun.
It'd be so fun. But back to the topic on hand. It's kind of great that you brought up Red, White, and Blue. I
had to.
I know you. Of course you had to. I don't believe though I have any more. Like, yeah, I've got a huge list, but we kind of went on for a long time on this part, so I might as well wrap that up.
That's my fault. My bad.
Is it? Because I'm the one that ended up going way too hard about the brainstorm concept.
I expected nothing less, but here we are still.
With that being said, we shift orbits, and we find ourselves at common tropes and themes. This new path takes us deeper into royalty in dramas, uncovering hidden connections and unfolding new layers.
Awesome. We did kind of put a little bit of this in like the intro to the topic, but we can go deeper and in depth, you know?
Some common tropes oftentimes would be the bodyguard, the royalty, which the next prince is that, or royalty and royalty, or servant to royalty. And this is more so in romantic aspects.
Yeah.
Or sometimes inheriting royalty, but not by necessarily family.
Or like not wanting your title.
Also the
At
next
all.
prince.
Anyway, we can circle this back to the next prince. We will. That's our current hyperfixation.
I will. I will, for sure.
Nyxi will, for sure.
The next prince is definitely a great example of bodyguard and royalty. Because, you know, Chadin is essentially the knight, or, you know, his personal knight to Karin, who doesn't want his title, but is still considered a prince nonetheless. Like, man really doesn't want it.
He doesn't want to be there.
He didn't want to be there. He was practically dragged there. He was
Kidnapped
threatened.
is a stretch, but the threat was there.
The threat was absolutely there. It might not have absolutely come from Chadin, but there was a threat the entire time.
Yeah.
There still is one. Okay? And some of it's by blood. So, I mean, some of it is family. Actually, I take that back. I don't think it's family. Some of that is other families.
I was like, though, another really popular aspect of royal in dramas or whatever is this idea of like power dynamics, and that complicates things for me personally.
Yeah. Now, what type of power dynamics are we talking about here, madam?
Literal ones, like with status and such.
So again, the next prince, we have a knight to a prince, because that's a status difference too.
Also, a conflict of interest.
That's a major conflict of interest due to the fact that his job is to protect Kanin. But, like, yes, you can protect someone and love someone, but at the same time, that is a conflict right there. Because, like, you also can't assume to be by his side and still be his knight. Like, you can't do both of those at the same time. And so that is a major conflict of interest.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget the coworker that I was talking to was like, I'm not watching it because that sounds like a major conflict of interest. And I was like, it is. But it's good. It's good.
Anyway, power dynamics, conflict of interest, common themes and such in these dramas and storylines and whatever. If handled properly, it can be it's always going to bring tension. It's always going to be a conflict. Some series handle it better than others, I will say.
Yeah.
Because sometimes it just feels icky. I hate like when characters will over abuse, and like you do see this occasionally where like the one with the higher status is like so controlling and like will use their status as a way of control of the other, and the other has no way to fight against it because, you know, that difference in status and like the protocol and whatever that comes along with that. And just like I don't know, that can get real messy real quick, and it can feel icky. It's just icky sometimes.
That's fair.
But on a lighter note, a lot of times the grandeur of these series, immaculate. Like set designs and costume designs,
so nice.
Top tier most of the time. The next prince, once more, top tier.
Almost what was it? Either almost 9 or almost 10 digit budget.
Wild.
For the next prince. Insane budgeting. But, like, back to the set designs, you know, like, talking about those. How about, like, talking about Wuxa's and, like, Shansha? Like, they're...
Yes. Absolutely.
Like, I know a lot of it is CGI, but that's still a lot of budgeting into making those set designs for that. And so, so impressive. So beautiful.
I'll say, like, you don't have to have, like, this grandeur budget to, like, present, like, royalty, like, in, like, this, like, really grandeur way, you know? Because, like, again, going back to one of our series satellites for this week, but, like, the loyal pin had was, like, very limited in set, and, like, we talked about this in that episode,
Mm-hmm.
but, like, it didn't have, all of these different sets, and, like, the sets weren't, like, anything, like, hugely, like, decadent, but, like, they still did their job. Like, they were still
Yeah.
beautiful and, like, had, like, this air of, like, beauty to them that very nice.
100% agree.
Finally, our third focus is audience perception. This is where we highlight its significance in understanding the deeper layer of depiction of royalty in media.
I think it's very interesting that when it comes to the depiction of royalty, having no knowledge that royalty technically, in more so Western standpoint, deals with a government kind of stance. It's very interesting that in media we use royalty so often as a concept, less so in the government stance or point, and more so in like seeing this like higher up, like,
Mhm.
very rich kind of,
Yeah,
status like symbol.
like
And
a
part of
fantasy.
that,
It's selling a fantasy.
yes, exactly. But what's so fascinating about it is I feel like it also really heavily explains and like tells so well how human society as itself, as on its own, really actually drives, I feel like, heavily from a standpoint of monarchy and a standpoint of leadership. Because like
Mhm.
every government has a central leadership, and technically if you really want to talk about royalty, any form of government is a form of royalty in the essence of a leadership. You could talk about something with like we're talking about like chiefs, we're talking about like, presidents, king, queens, which are more in the traditional concept. It's always like
It's a
interesting to think
hierarchy.
that,
Yeah.
yeah, a hierarchy, exactly. That's what I was trying to say. Because like it's interesting that we use that concept so much in stuff that it really shows as civilization. We heavily rely on unity through someone as guidance
Mhm.
in some form of way. That even
Yeah.
goes into religion. I'm not going into that deeply, but like that even also dives into
Yeah.
religion, in concept
It's
form.
yeah, it's the hierarchy, it's the guidance, it's the
Mm-hmm.
status.
Mm-hmm. And so like that's something to just like really think about and be like,
Mhm.
that it really shows.
Yeah.
Um Even if maybe it's a heavily romance drama, but like the status thing's still there. And so looking into like shows that are based on royalty and whatnot, it's just something that it's like shows human nature in the sense of
Mhm.
that kind of standpoint. And I don't know, that's something I kind of wanted to talk about. And I feel like depending on, like, you made a comment previously when I was trying to say, saying that it's selling a fantasy, there's that too. And I feel like especially selling fantasies concept is that, I think that's a very much a true statement due to the fact that also as humans, it's kind of to watch we've talked about this before, but to watch something that is also allured to like escapism,
Mhm.
and may that be in like in a concept in which we're like, oh, I can escape into a mindset of someone with much more status, so much more money, more
Yeah.
spending ability, more like just higher, fantasy aspect of like grass on the world. It's like, that's kind of sometimes royalty plays into that concept when
Oh,
watching a
definitely,
series.
yeah.
And that's just something that's very unique to look into about really thinking about.
I really don't know what I wanna say here, but I think I do this a lot where I'm like, you know, there are definitely people who like these type of storylines and people who don't. I'm like, I personally I do this so often. I'm like, I'm kind of in middle of the road about it. Like, we've talked so much about The Next Prince, just on podcast, off podcast, just
Mm-hmm.
to say like I cannot say that I like don't enjoy these type of storylines and like, but like, is it like a thing that I immediately see it and I'm like, yeah, okay, that is definitely something I will watch simply because of the setting or like the trope of royalty being in it. I wouldn't necessarily say that. There's typically some other draw to it that makes me gravitate towards it. The next prince draws are Zenunu, obviously. The fact that we've been waiting for this for 3 years. Um, so that you wait for something for so long that, like, once you finally get it, you kinda latch to it. Just a note for just y'all, have never, ever seen Nyxi so excited about an episode's dropping of a series that's airing. Hands down, the most excited I've ever seen her for a series is The Next Prince. Wild.
That's fair. I have another series that's coming up that might play out the same way, but we'll see how it goes.
We'll see how many texts I get about the dropping of those episodes.
Oh, of The Next Prince, to see when I fade out?
No, I was talking about, you said that there's another series that, like, might be similar.
Oh, we'll just have to see.
Yeah.
Fair enough. We've broken everything down, now it's time to put it all together. In this segment, we'll share our thoughts on royalties and dramas as a full constellation and reflect on its total impact.
All in all, being within the confines of royalty, either just for, like, explicitly the setting or adding in, the social, political, like, societal aspects of it, you're always gonna have a ton of tension in that simply just by the nature of it, which can be interesting or not depending on how it's handled.
Of course. I think I've already stated a lot of what I had to say about the whole
Mhm.
thing with royalties and stuff like that, showcasing in a series. So honestly, I don't even know how to wrap it up other than the fact that, like I said, I think back in the last segment that it's kind of like very interesting how it kind of shows society, but it also like allures to like a really nice like fantasy kind of concept.
Mhm.
And I guess depending on how serious the series is, depends on like how realistic it is. And
Yeah.
sometimes that could be realistic in terms of like the actual status itself and how it actually is like, or realistic in the form of actually take that back, just that concept, and because like that itself can be used even in a fantasy setting and still take on like a realistic viewpoint. It's definitely something that's very common and like very much used across pretty much every culture to a certain degree in
Yeah.
what we're portraying. And like I said, may that be in the traditional like royalty aspect, or may that just be, you know,
A
a much
division
more
of
higher
status.
level, yeah, status aspect for sure. And just like that, the constellation is fully drawn. We thank you for joining us for this episode of Stars Align Dramas and Dreams podcast, where we meet amongst the stars that illuminate the love stories that light up our universe and connect us all.
If you've enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe. And share your stardust and thoughts with us. We'd love to hear your comments, favorite moments, or suggestions for what we should explore next.
You can connect with us in the comments or through our socials, as well as our email that is linked in the description. Let's keep the conversation going under the stars.
Until next time, keep dreaming, keep listening, and remember, love always shines brightest in the cosmos.
Bye.
Bye.